Can you all hear me? Well, the thing is, I am going to be presented, and next to me is Leo. Leo is going to assist us during this presentation. So if there's any problem during the session, please send an email to Leo, okay? Very good. Hold on just a second. Well, I'm glad that most of you are already able to listen to me, right? I'm just going to take out this image that you have there. I'm going to start sharing my presentation, okay? And if you want to send any kind of messages to me, I will be receiving it through the chat box, right? I think that most of you are already accustomed to using this WebEx tools, right? So I believe we're not going to have any kind of problems. Well, during the session, you will be able to hear me, but you won't be able to see me, right? So as far as the audio is okay, we are good to go. Okay? Very good. Okay, some announcements before I start. Number one, certificates will be sent to all participants via email, right? According to Leo, it's going to take up to 7 days. So within 7 days, we'll all be receiving your certificates, right? There will always also be a survey to be completed right after this webinar. So please wait a little bit and please complete this survey. It's going to take only a couple of minutes, and your feedback is really important to us. So please wait and answer it. Your information or your feedback will be able to will allow us to give better and better presentations and put together better webinars in the future. Okay? And by the way, there will be more Cambridge webinars on the way, better learning webinars on Fridays. So weekly posts on Facebook. Please stay tuned. Okay, so let me start up with some questions for you, right? Number one, can you all hear me then? Can I really start? Okay, great, wonderful. Uh, well, I would like to know, where are you from? I mean, if you could, I would like you to write down the name of your city, and if you're not from São Paulo, the different cities or states that you are from. Wow, oh, that's so nice. Oh, near São Paulo, very good. Juiz de Fora. Oh, amazing. I'm so glad that you were all here joining the session. And I'm really sorry for this inconvenience at the beginning. I hope it pays off to be waiting and to stay up to the end of the session. Okay? So we have a lot of people from São Paulo as well. Guarulhos, very good. Wonderful. Great. Rio de Janeiro as well. Great. Campinas. Wonderful. Well, teachers are teachers. We could be enjoying our weekend already, but we are here because we love what we do. Oh, Campo Grande, Mato Grosso do Sul. I know this region very well. Oh, great. Guaíra, São Paulo. Great. Well, I won't be able to be reading all the cities, but I'm so glad that you all joined the session, and I hope we all have a very, very nice session today, and we'll be working on vocabulary. But, oh, there's another question that I would like to ask you. Where do you teach? There is a question mark missing there, right? Okay, so when I When you answer, I don't want you to answer the name of your school. I would like you to write down more or less the kind of school. Is it, are you a private teacher? Do you teach in a private language school? Is it a regular colégios, as we have in São Paulo, a bilingual school? Okay, we have private teachers. Very good. Okay, we also have teachers from colégios, from private language centers. Very good. Great. Oh, we have a very, very uh, big mixture of different realities, right? I hope all the content that I'm going to work with will apply to all your realities, right? Yeah, some of you teaching different schools, right? As private teachers, language schools, and regular schools as well. Very good. And what kind of students do you have? Kids, teens, or adults, or both, or all the three? Adults, kids, all of them, all the three. Well, great. We as teachers, we generally teach a little bit of any kind of segment, any age target in different realities, right? Well, that's so nice to know. And I am going to develop some activities. Can I count on you to participate in all of them? Please say yes. Okay, great. Okay, so I won't be able to see you participate, but I am counting that you are going to follow all the activities, right? Okay, very good. So let's get started then. Okay, I am going to start with this picture. If you look at this picture, you can see that they are all, is one picture full of stores. Altogether, how many stores do we have? For 8 stores, very good. So six in the ground floor and four on the ground floor, and then four more on the second floor, right? Very good. But we have different types of stores, right? But instead of concentrating on the stores, I would ask you to look at the picture and see if you can spot the items I mentioned. For example, can you see a bike? Yes, very good. What about balls? Yes. What kind of balls can you see? Can you see soccer balls and basketballs? Yes. Very good. And what about tennis balls? Can you see tennis balls? No, right? Only soccer balls and basketballs. We don't have tennis balls, but we have tennis rackets. Can you see the tennis rackets? Yes, very good. And what about musical instruments? I can see a piano. Can you see it too? A piano, a guitar, right? I can also see a violin. It looks like a violin, right? But we also have clothing, right? Oh, it's a cello. Very good. Well, trumpets too, and drums, right? Very good, because we have a music store there. But we also have clothing. Can you see, for example, sweaters and a suit? Yes, very good. And what about sneakers, tennis shoes? Can you see them too? Yes? Okay, very good. I can see a skirt. Can you see a skirt too? Yes, you can? Very good. And what about food? Because we have a restaurant, Rita's restaurant, but I can't see anything, any kind of food in the restaurant. But I can see pizza. Can you see the pizza? Yes, very good. Well, before I mentioned, some of you have, have already mentioned that. But can you see a sandwich too? It's not in the same place. Yes, very good. And what about going back to clothing? What about the skirt? The skirt is very easy to spot, right? But what about a sofa? Can you see a sofa? Yes, a black skirt, right? Can you see a sofa? You red sofa, very good. And what about, well, this, let's see if you can see that. Can you see a bed? Let's see if you can spot it. No? Yes or no? No? Well, it's really very well hidden. Is in the ground floor. Behind the shoes. Very good. Wonderful. Very good. So some of you have already noticed that there are certain things that are wrong. For example, we have a home store, and on the second floor is Herb's home store. And of course, we have a lot of furniture, but there is something wrong. What's wrong with this picture? The wrong thing is that it has a sandwich in the picture, right? So there is a sandwich in Herb's home store. And what about in the music store? What's wrong with the music store? Yes, soccer balls. So we can say that there are soccer balls in Mary's music store, right? Okay, very good. So here goes the task, right? Because I can see you, and we cannot interact directly with one another, I am going to give you some time to write sentences, right? So don't start writing anything yet, right? So you have number one to spot every single wrong thing that you can see in the stores that you have in the picture, right? After that, you have to think about the structure you have to use. There is, there are. So, for example, there is a sandwich in her home store, or there are soccer balls in Mary's music store. Okay? Very good. So this is the task. But it's not going to be so easy. So the first thing you have to do is to get pen and paper ready to start. Okay? Can I go on? Do you have paper and pens? Very good. Okay. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute, and I'm going to give you some time to look at the picture, right? And you have to try to remember as much as possible the items that are wrong and where they are, right? And the sentences have to be complete. You have to write down, there is da 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 in the da 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 store. And the same for the plural. Only complete sentences, okay? So when I say go, I'll take out a picture and then I'm gonna start giving you time. When I say stop, let's see how many sentences out of eight you are able to write down. Let's see how your memory is working, okay? Ready? Okay, very good. So I'm gonna start, and you have 1 minute to look at the picture in order to memorize as many details as possible, right? One, two, three, go. 30 seconds. You can start writing now. You have just to memorize the picture, okay? Don't write anything. 15 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm taking out the picture. Now try to write as many sentences as possible using the is there are with the wrong things you found in the picture, okay? Let's see how many you can put together. Very good. Some of you are using the chat box so I can see what you were writing. It's amazing because you can sometimes remember the thing that is wrong, but you can't remember the place. Or you remember the place, but you don't remember the name of the store, right? But one thing's for sure, all of you can remember what's wrong with the picture. That's great. Well, some of you are able to remember even the name of the store. Amazing. I'm gonna give you 30 extra seconds, and then I'm gonna stop the activity, okay? It's amazing. Some of you can even remember the name of the store. I wouldn't be able to. 'Okay, 10 seconds to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So altogether, how many sentences could you put together? Around 6, 5? Well, that's the average. Some people can put together more, some less, some more with half of the information. 7, that's a very good number. Great. A very different activity, right? Well, do you want to see the picture again just to see if you were right or if you were wrong? Yes? Okay, here is the picture. Something that is very interesting, sometimes you remember the thing that is wrong, but generally you are able to place it somewhere else in a different store. Of course, we did this activity in a different way because we are um, in a webinar session, right? In a real classroom situation, I would do this a little bit differently. I would put students into pairs, and then one student will compete with the other, writing sentences using the is there are. And when time is up, the student with more sentences written would win the race, right? And the good thing about an activity like this is that after you write down the sentences, you want to see if the objects or the things in the stores are correct. And definitely what happens in this case is that you do a lot of writing because you were rethinking about the structure. There is, there are, there is, there are, over and over again, together with the vocabulary, right? And after writing, when you are in a real classroom situation, students will pair up and exchange information. So one will read his or her own sentences to their partners, right? So then we have a little bit of listening, speaking, and writing as well, right? Oh, some people are saying that it was very easy to memorize. My question is, why was it easy to memorize? Do you have any idea in this case? There is a reason for that. Because I could simply show you the picture and start the writing of the sentences, couldn't I? I could. But imagine when I asked, can you see a bed? Many of you were not able to spot the bed. So if you can't spot the bed, how can you write a sentence if you don't know what's wrong with that specific store? So again, this session is on vocabulary. And my first hint of all is whenever you start setting up an activity, you always start with vocabulary. You either introduce new vocabulary or you simply review vocabulary. In this case, I was going through the picture, I was exploiting the picture to make sure students would know the vocabulary they were about to use. And not only that, they were able to know exactly what kind of a structure would be used for this specific activity. It's a game, of course, it's a game-like activity. So it has rules, and one of the rules is you can't simply answer soccer balls, bike, or sandwich. You have to write the full sentence, especially if you are pairing up with uh, classmate and you are competing in a writing race. In this case, you have to have the whole sentence um, perfectly written, right? So again, this is a very simple activity that is related to vocabulary, right? And the title of my presentation is When Words Do Not Get in the Way, Vocabulary Activities to Facilitate Learning. But I am going, this activity that we have just finished, I'm going back to this activity later on. First, I want to point out some considerations about vocabulary, right? What is the impact in communication, especially when we talk about different levels of communication, real life communication or interaction in the classroom. I see that some of you cannot hear. When you click on participants or panelists, send your message to Leo, and privately he will be able to help you with the audio if you're having any kind of problems with the video in checking my presentation or visualizing my presentation or the audio, okay? Very good. All right. Okay, do you agree with me that when we learn a language, we want to use it in practice, be it in writing or speaking, but mainly in speaking, especially if we're talking about teens? Yes, very good. Okay, but do you agree that, especially not only in real life, but especially when we are working in a language classroom, not sometimes, but quite often, words get in the way because students sometimes they want to say things, but they can't. They get stuck for some reason, and generally we relate this difficulty with the use of words, right? Students not being able to manage words, be it words in isolation or words within a structure, right? So it's really something very, very interesting because when that happens, communication slips away. And then when you look at this image, you see the format of an hourglass. hourglass is what we would call in Portuguese ampulheta, right? It looks like an ampulheta because words are getting in the way. But when we clear the whole thing, we see that communication can take place. So we have to sharpen the edges, clean up the space a little bit by working with vocabulary in order to allow students to see this line of communication that they can use in order to be able to interact, right? Okay. Uh, this is a great. Well, Leo, if you can hear me, please help some of the teachers. They're having problem with the video. Okay. All right. So the idea is to use words in communication, and these words they shouldn't get in the way. So how can we manage in order not to have them interfering with communication instead of helping, right? Okay. So during the session, what we are going to do is to first work with the concept of vocabulary and communication, then the importance of vocabulary work, then the idea of word knowledge. What are the important aspects of learning a word, for example? And what's the difference between word knowledge and vocabulary learning? And the conclusions concerning vocabulary in general. Hold on just a second. Okay, so Leo's saying that he's checking in order to see if he can help the teachers who are having problems, okay? All right. So, by the way, let me just point out something very important. This webinar is being recorded, so if you miss something during the session, you can access our blog later on, and you are going to see the Better Learning blog, and you are going to see all the presentations together at at YouTube channel, right? At Cambridge, Brazil. Later on, well, we can check if we can send out an e-newsletter giving setting the link for all of you to access later on. Okay? Very good. Hold on just a second. I think that Leo wants to say something. Hold on just a second. Hi, everybody. Sorry again. I was talking to Leo. I think he managed to spot the problem. So the teachers who are not able to see the video of my presentation, hold on just a second. He's solving the problem, right? So can I go on? Yes? Okay, very good. So this is one of the codes part of the code that I used in the summary of my presentation by linguist David Wilkins. And he says, without grammar, very little can be conveyed. But without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. And this is quite true when we talk about communication, verbal communication. But there are certain things that we have to take into account as well, right? Is that the words are not simply things that we use and they have power of their own, right? The way we want to convey meaning to the words, they change as well, right? So that means we have to think about the words we are saying. We have to think about the messages we want to pass on. And there has to be communication because what we have to say has to be meaningful to the person who's listening, right? Imagine if I came up here and I started saying a lot of things about topics that are not interesting for all of you. Possibly after 2 or 3 minutes, you would stop and start doing something totally different. I'm sorry. Lee was here again. He mentioned something else. I think he's going to get things right. Hold on just a second. Sorry. Okay. I just received the information that the problem is my checkbox, so I have to close my checkbox in order to allow it to give you. Hold on, just a second. Sorry again. The thing is that all this is going to be recorded, right? And of course, the ones who are listening to the session, we are going to have fun because we are going to remember all this, right? So I will have to close my chat box so that you can see everything that I have on my screen. The only problem is that I won't be able to look at your answers. So I trust that you will be able to hear me. Now, if something happens, Leo is going to come here and tell me that I have to open the chat box, okay? Very good. Okay, so as I was saying, we have not only to think about the words we want to use and about the message we want to pass on, but what we have to say should be meaningful to the person who's listening to us, right? And if we think about it, words should be self-explanatory, like the images that I am showing you. Isn't it true? Like meet and send and chat and like, right? With the likes, with the heart. So again, it's like this. Smile. Although we are having all these problems, right? So thank you very much for your patience. Okay, so messages can often get blurry as well, right? Like this. You can see that there is a message, words, but isn't it a lot better if we can get communication through without any problems like this? Totally, right? So again, the idea is not to be overwhelmed by words. And sometimes this is what happens when we are working with students, especially whenever a new unit starts. Because with a new unit, um, we will be working with new vocabulary and also new grammar topics, right? So it's more information and more words for students. So we want language to be useful and practical. That means we want to use language, right, in practice, in action. So basically, what happens is sometimes it is difficult to talk when we let our words get in the way. And more basic students are, the harder it is to overcome this difficulty of not knowing many words, right? So the words that we know, they have to be very, very well taught and practiced. So without vocabulary work, students get this way. Which way? This way, that way, which way? Right way, wrong way? Which equals for them, which way will you choose? That means we leave up to the students to take the direction they want because they don't know exactly how to work with this vocabulary. So when we provide vocabulary and when we talk about vocabulary work, when sometimes an activity does not work, sometimes it's not because the students don't have control of grammar or because the activity is too difficult. Sometimes it's because of vocabulary. And when an activity does not work, whose fault is it? And the students are possibly saying his fault, her fault, their fault, everybody's fault. It's everybody else, but not me, right? Generally, this is the first reaction they have when they have difficulties. So going back to this activity that we first had, we started exploiting the picture. And with the picture comes vocabulary. So vocabulary is the first thing we work with so that when I give you 1 minute to look at the picture, you already know the vocabulary you have to check. You know the stores that are there. Of course, I did it very quickly, but with your students, you're going to call students' attention to the name of the stores, the type of stores, how many are with something wrong using um, simple, I mean, not plural, single, I mean, not plural form. So basically, we are going to use there is, there are. So we are going to here set the whole type of information students need before they start writing their sentences, right? But this is the way I wanted to play this game because you're not here. We are not together in the same room. But the original activity, students can look at the picture and they have to write their sentences using the picture. So it's not a memory game. They're only competing with their partner in order to come up with the sentences. What's the difference in this case? Not only the procedures, but the level of difficulty as well. Because if I have students that are very good, then I can take out the model sentences. I can take out any kind of input but the picture. And with the knowledge they have of the structure there is, there are, they will be able to come up with the sentences using the vocabulary. Now, if I have medium-paced or slow-paced students, they need more input in order to be able to perform the activity. In this case, I leave the picture on, and they simply look at the picture in order to come up with the sentences. But what if they are slow-paced or very slow-paced? Then I give them more input. I give them the words. So these are the words or the items that are wrong in the stores. So I have the picture and now I have the words so they know exactly what kind of sentences should be formed. The sentences should be formed using the words that are there. And if necessary, I can even make the activity easier by doing what? By showing them a sample sentence. And they will simply follow the first sentence. I can give them a sentence like this in the singular form and one in the plural form if necessary, right? The idea, of course, I wanted to see how many sentences you would be able to put together, but in fact, for a teacher in the classroom, it doesn't matter. Even if a student comes up with only 2 or 3 sentences, the amount of sentences he tried to form in his mind already made him or her use there is, there are quite a lot. There's a ball, no, there are balls, soccer balls, there are soccer balls in the shoe store. No, there's soccer balls in the music store, for example. So imagine you saw this by yourselves, right? Thinking over and over about the same sentence, about different topics, different items, different stores, right? So again, if we think about it, in this activity, we had picture exploitation, which is the use of grammar, the use of vocabulary, and then we inserted grammar into the activity. Then we had listening because you listen to my examples and then you started writing. Eventually, working in pairs, you would write and read afterwards, right? And afterwards, I would, to close up the activity, ask you before showing the picture what kind of sentences you were able to put together. And then one pair would correct the other if mistakes are made in terms of the wrong thing in the wrong store, right? And in this case, we're working with different types of intelligences. We're talking about the linguistic intelligence, the intrapersonal intelligence, the visual intelligence. So there's so many items involved, and I'm sure that when you were trying to remember the items when I took out the picture, some of you tried to remember because of the order of the store. Some of you tried to remember because of the position of the items. Some of you tried to remember because of the words you were able to remember, right? So then again, we activate different techniques or strategies in order to be able to achieve the goal. And of course, this activity allow us to have different types of options, to achieve different types of goals. So, example, I can ask you later on to write a composition about this shop, right? All the shop altogether. Let's call it a mall. So talk a little bit about the mall. So you would write down about the shops, the stores, and all the wrong things you were able to find there. So again, if I wanted a real writing activity, a small composition, it could be generated by the picture, right? After all the procedures that we use to close up as a big, huge writing activity in the end. So how much can I use this picture? Well, I can use different types of activities provided they fit my planning, right? Because it depends on the amount of time I have to develop this specific grammar topic. If I have more time, I use different types of activities. If not, I will favor the activities that will practice skills that my students need more practice on, definitely. So weird not to be able to see your comments, but I rather have you uh, see the presentation rather than having me hear what you have to say, although it's very important. I miss it, right? So all this is going to, well, this thing about working with vocabulary and generating different kinds of activities and especially practice on different kinds of skills proves that language learning involves four skills instruction: listening, speaking, reading, writing. And when you say writing, but writing, do we have to work on vocabulary when we work on writing? Because students have already learned vocabulary. Why should I work with vocabulary when I work on writing? Well, very simple. What if I ask you to write a composition? Okay, write about the people you like right now. What would you do? Probably you wouldn't do it, right? To start off, but you would say, but do I have to think about relatives or just friends? Do they have to live here in Brazil or abroad? Can I make them up? Can I create different characters? How many words should I use? How many lines? Etc., etc., etc. So this is too vague. And if we think about vocabulary, what kind of vocabulary are students supposed to use? So when they don't know exactly what to do, they might end up by not doing anything, right? So we have to really, really guide them, right? So then many questions will start coming up: why, when, how, which, etc. Right? So basically, let me give you another example. Think about a person you like. Can be anybody. The first person you can think of can be a friend, a relative, it doesn't matter. Just think, right? Think about this person. What's his or her name? Who is she? A friend, a family member, a classmate, a teacher? What does he or she do? Right? So tell me something special that he or she can do. Two things. What is she like? Or what is he like? Tall, um, black hair, etc., etc., etc. Just think. You don't have to write down. Of course, with your students, you would ask them to write down. If I take out the questions, if I asked you to answer the questions without thinking about the questions, for example, wow, I have a very nice friend and his name is Leo. He is a very good friend and he's also a coworker. He was a teacher once, right? But now he works in the marketing department, especially marketing communications. And he does many things very well, including talking to people and creating different designs for different campaigns. He's really great. And he's not short, but he's not very tall. Um, he has brown hair, and by the way, in terms of personality, he's very outgoing and talkative, right? So again, what did I do? I used these questions and I put together a small paragraph about Leo. And guess what? This can be used for communication, for speaking activity, and it can also be used for a small writing activity. Again, we have to focus on the process, not on the product. Doesn't matter what kind of composition comes up after an activity like this. What we are doing is teaching our students how to think, how to put together words and information. And basically, we start with the vocabulary that is necessary for this specific kind of activity, right? And the same thing becomes a lot easier, isn't it? Because now students know exactly what they are supposed to do. And of course, this has a lot to do with motivation. This has a lot to do with confidence in whatever task you assign to your students, right? And the same thing happens if you want to um, challenge your students a little bit more. So instead of talking about only one person, then you talk about a group of people. And then for every single person, you have a paragraph. And in the end, you have a composition with three, four paragraphs, right? And one activity will prepare students for the next one, be it a writing activity or a speaking activity. The most important thing is that students know what kind of vocabulary and structure they are about to use, right? And for example, here you can create a virtual room or a virtual classroom. But why not start with vocabulary they can use to create this room, right? Instead of putting things into the right places in the room, they have to think about what kind of items they are going to have in their room. And if they don't know the items you have ready for them to use, they're going to start thinking about words they don't know. How do you say that? How do you say this? How do you say that other thing? And they will use or try to use many words except the ones they should use that are in the book in that specific moment, right? So again, it's a matter of guiding their eyes towards the words on their pages, right? On the books they are using at that specific moment. So now talking about word is not, we think because we are English speakers, we think that learning a language is easy. But you have to remember how difficult it was when we started learning a word, right? Because, for example, the word bus is so easy, bus, but students keep saying bus, isn't it true? And you make them repeat over and over again, and they continue saying bus. And if you think about words without vowels at the end, for example, book, they continue saying bookie or 80 instead of 8, right? Because knowing a word is more complex than simply reading or listening to it once and then being able to remember the word, right? When we talk about word knowledge, we are talking about form, meaning, and use. And these are the things we are going to check today, right? So, example, form. We have students have to know how the word is written, how the word is spoken, how it is pronounced, and word parts, right? Example, this page is a page from our Connect series, right? In this case, we have the vocabulary, we have the written word, and we have the audio. So students already know how it is written. They are going to listen to the word so that they will be able to see uh, how to write the word and how to say the word, pronounce the word, right? And this is one of the reasons why every time you have books teaching new vocabulary, it comes with the audio. Because if you don't know how to pronounce the word does not have a sound, how can we be able to later on remember the word, right? Because every time you look at a word, you naturally hear the sound of that word in your mind, even if you don't say it out loud, right? And we also have word parts. For example, affixes, right? We have the word and we have a prefix or a suffix. And possibly you're going to say, but why should we teach this to our students? Of course, depends on the level. But for example, the word play, they are all the same, right? And if you ask students to look up the word swimmer, in the dictionary, they won't be able to find it if they don't know that er at the end of swim means the person who does the action, right? So, for example, play is a word, and I have the same word written many, many times, but they are not the same word. We have play, display, displayed, misplayed, and misplay. Although some of them are similar, they are different words, right? Some of them can be verbs or nouns, example, right? Very good. So by teaching them how to recognize word parts, they become a little more independent because then they can make sense of unknown words just by looking at the suffix and prefix each word brings, right? For example, verb tenses, past tense, regular past tense, continuous, etc. Now, talking about meaning, we have form and meaning, concept and reference, and we have associations, right? In terms of form and meaning, here, this is the word, the way the word is written, and we know the meaning of the word because we have the picture of the word. So we have a very, very clear and straight connection between form and the meaning of the word, right? But there is not necessarily a one-to-one correspondence between a meaning and a single word. This is from Norbert Schmidt. Why is it so? Because, for example, I have a pen. Possibly you have a pen in front of you. So take out this pen or pencil if you don't have a pencil, right, or a pen. Okay, let's suppose this is a plane. Fly your plane using the pen. Very good. Well, I can't see it, but I can imagine you doing this, right? What if you think this pen is a dart? You can throw the dart, right? You don't have to throw it. Just pretend you're going to, right? You can pretend the pen it's a seesaw. Imagine. Up and down, up and down, up and down. You can use it as a broom. Let's pretend it's a broom. Very good. Let's pretend it's a car. Let's pretend it's a snake. And so on and so forth. And by using this kind of imaginative identifications, we can see through the movements students make if they are able to recognize the vocabulary you are using. You can use verbs, you can use adjectives. For example, raise your pen slowly. Put it down fast. Shake it back and forth, etc., etc., etc. Right? So there are many things that you can do, or vocabulary that you can use in this activity. Right? This is from 5-minute activities from Penny. But again, concept and reference, we have same words used for different things, right? And in this case, the kid brings an elephant as a pet, and he says to his mother, who's very mad, he says, well, I wanted a pet, and you're always telling me I should think big when I make decisions for the future. Well, not that big, right? So again, big has a meaning, but depending on how you apply it, it can become something totally different, right? This is from English Idioms News. And we can also have a situation like this when the cat says, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that mouse. Of course, mouse with two different meanings, totally different meanings, right? And we also can have different associations. Like, for example, in this case, where the kid says, I'm never having kids. I hear they take 9 months to download. Imagine. Well, a download that is that long, nobody would ever think of either, right? Okay. So association. So Herbert Spencer says, how often misused words generate misleading thoughts? And especially when we talk about students, this is more common than we can think of, right? So like saying, for example, do you speak English? And students come up with a short instead of a little, right? So again, not only associations can be wrong, but the use can also be not correct of a word, right? So when we talk about use, we talk about grammatical functions, we talk about collocations, we talk about constraints of use, and in this case, we're talking about frequency and register, right? It's a pity that I can't see your comments, but I promise one thing. If you have any questions that I'm not able to answer during the session, I am going to give you my email address at the end of the session. Please do email me later, and then I can answer some of the questions that you are probably asking, and I won't have time to answer right now because I can see them, right? Okay. So in terms of grammatical functions, we know when we use sentences what kind of words we're using within a sentence. So I want you to come up with a meaning of word. In this case, word stands for a specific meaning within the sentence, right? I really wanted to buy that car, but I didn't have any word. So what could this word mean? I assume that most of you have already guessed. I didn't have any money, right? The second, I had ham and eggs for work this morning. Of course, in this case, ham and eggs in morning will bring up the idea of breakfast. So I had ham and eggs for breakfast this morning. It's very difficult to word in the morning when you stay up late. What is it's difficult to word in the morning? In this case, this word is different from the previous ones because the previous ones are nouns. In this case, it's a verb. right? And students will identify this without really thinking about the word verb, but they know it comes an action in this. In this case, is to wake up. It's very difficult to wake up in the morning when you stay up late. And last but not least, I have to go to the word to have my eyes tested. In this case, word would be, possibly you have already guessed, eye doctor. I have to go to the eye doctor to have my eyes tested. This is a very simple activity just to show you that we can think of vocabulary in isolation as a set as a lexical set, but we can also think about vocabulary within a sentence with a grammatical function, right? And students are able to learn both, right? For example, when we talk about vocabulary, about words, when we talk about singular and plural, we are in a way talking about grammar as well. When we talk about simple present, past tense, regular past tense, it's vocabulary, but it's also grammar at the same time, right? Okay, what about collocations? Oscar is a high man. Of course not. Is a tall man, right? And if I take out man, Oscar is high, for example, it's a totally different meaning, isn't it? And what about McDonald's, a quick food restaurant? Terrible, right? It hurts our ears, doesn't it? But again, it's not a matter of uh, knowing the reason. It's usage, right? Some words, they get together naturally and some words don't, right? This is usage, right? And they are traveling on foot and not by foot as I wrote here. So again, whenever we see mistake made by students like the ones that I showed you here, it's very difficult for us to correct them, right? Because it has to do with how words combine and usage, the way people use it. It's like saying gente fina e cara legal. We say gente fina e cara legal, but we don't say cara fina e gente legal, right? So the same thing happens in English, right? Okay. And what about register? This is Calvin, one of my favorite cartoon characters. And he says, I did it, I did it. And he completes, somehow I imagine this experience would be more rewarding. Why is it fun? Because no kid talks like this, right? And our register shows it to us. That means some kids talk like kids. Teens, they talk like teens. And adults, they speak like adults, right? So again, this is from Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson, right? So when we talk about register, this the way this important yet implicit extra meaning information colors the word and constrains how we use it is referred to by the cover term register. It describes the stylistic variations that make each word more or less appropriate for certain language situations or language purposes. Example, this from Norbert Schmidt, right? Example is, would you like some water? And the idea is to have people answer no thank you or yes please. Some people they say no, oh yes, and it seems very impolite, isn't it? Now, it's worse when you say, would you like some water? And people say, thank you. And you say, thank you, yes, or thank you, no. Isn't it true? Sometimes we don't know exactly what the person means, right? And the same thing would be if I asked you something like, would you be so kind to oblige me with a glass of water, please? Nobody talks like this, right? And of course, we have to know exactly what kind of vocabulary every single age target uses in order to teach them meaningful vocabulary, right? Not only vocabulary, but its structures and topics, right? So, summarizing everything that I did or we talked about word knowledge in terms of form, in terms of meaning, and in terms of use. So it's not so easy to talk about vocabulary because when we talk about, well, I brought around 30 new words for students to learn. Well, it's impossible to learn with so many words meaningfully in the way we would. So sometimes less is more. That means I will work with a couple of words in order to be able to practice grammar and develop skills. And eventually, students will be able to learn more language or more vocabulary outside the classroom as well. Because if you don't work with all these aspects, form, meaning, and use, chances are students will forget the vocabulary that is not used in the classroom, right? Okay. So in terms of vocabulary learning now, one thing we can be sure of is that words are not instantaneously acquired. Rather, they are learned over a period of time from numerous exposures. And this is true. That means we have to offer many opportunities to practice and review vocabulary so students get a lot of exposure in order to be able to internalize, remember, and reaccess previous vocabulary, right? This is the idea. So we have all had the experience of being able to recognize and understand a word when we see it in a text or hear it in conversation, but not being able to use it ourselves, right? It's like having receptive language. We are able to recognize it, but we cannot retrieve it and use it in conversation, for example, right? This common situation shows that there are different degrees of knowing a word, and this is true. Some people they can learn, they can read very well, but can't speak. That does not mean they don't know the language. It means that they need development in another different skill, right? But in terms of language, there is management of information. In this case, students might be able to answer questions or read, but not speak in this case, right? But vocabulary learning took place, but not in the four skills, not in the way we wanted it sometimes, right? So when we talk about vocabulary acquisition, we have two main processes in terms of teaching, right? Explicit learning through focused study of words. So let's not think about let's say intermediate or upper intermediate on up students, right? Let's think about basic students. I teach them numbers. So I'm working with form and meaning. I have how the word is written, I have how the word's pronounced, and I have the meaning. Then I have practice through listening. They have to listen, they have to understand and come up with the answers, right? Then I start working with grammar with only affirmative sentences, right? Then I give them the context, which is a dialogue. So they are going to see how language is being used, how the structure is being used, how communication takes place. And from there, I take what? The grammar. And the grammar in this case have affirmative, interrogative, and negative sentences. Then I go to the more complex exercises, right? Remember, this is beginner's level, right? Zero beginner student without any kind of knowledge of English. Then I go to the listening comprehension activity where they are going to have characters talking in, for example, in a conversation like this. Hi, Chris. Happy birthday. Oh, thank you. Oh, how old are you, by the way? I am 12 years old. Oh, congratulations. So it's a conversation, and students have to guess the age previously and then confirm or correct the age later on after the listening comprehension activity. Now, if I teach them the vocabulary and have them do the listening, chances are students won't be able to recognize the words and they won't be able to do the exercise, right? So I go through one exercise to the other in order to build their skills, in order to build their confidence, in order to prepare them for this listening exercise. And afterwards, then I can have what? A speaking practice. Now, how challenging can this speaking practice be? It depends on the level of my students. If I have slow-paced students, I can have a drill, a very, very simple drill like the ones I have here. If I have more sophisticated students with more exposure to the language, I can have mini dialogues, or I can have them pretend to be famous people and interact using different types of answers for this activity, right? But the most important thing is how we evolve from one activity to the other using all the skills that are necessary together with the grammar and together with the vocabulary, right? So again, when we talk about vocabulary acquisition, we have explicit learning and we have incidental learning through exposure to one's attention, through the exposure when one's attention is focused on the use of language. For example, with extensive reading. Extensive reading equals readers. When they have a book and they take home and they don't stop at every unknown word to look up in the dictionary. So they learn through the context. Like in the example of I had ham and eggs for a word this morning. So they learn through the context. They learn through surrounding words. And by not knowing every word, they are able to improve their vocabulary through the reading while having fun, while concentrating for longer within a content through the pages. They have to take the information from the first chapter to the second, to the third, and so on. And that will enhance their not only their reading skills, but the control of grammar and other skills as well, right? So readers, the ones who use, for example, Connect, will know these readers. They are attached to the series, right? But apart from these readers that you know, we also have all the files available. So you have then the possibility of having students reading and listening to the words at the same time, and having pre, while, and post-reading activities in order to back up their reading process, right? We are teaching them how to read, and we are giving them support for the reading through the activities they have to develop throughout the reading, right? And we have more readers, right? If you Some schools work with more than one, sometimes two, sometimes three readers per semester. Sometimes you use readers like these with more control of grammar and vocabulary, and some schools prefer to use, let's say, higher level readers, depending on the type of students and level that you have in your school, right? Let's not forget, though, to apply thinking skills, right? So, for example, in this case, we have to teach students how to manipulate vocabulary, like dividing it into different categories, creating word webs in order to be able to retrieve the information for a writing or speaking activity, like this one in this case. For example, here I can put myself in the middle and talk about the things I can do, example, or I can talk about another friend, classmate, or a mother or father, for example, if it's a teenage class, right? And here I can work with a partner and I can try to find out the character my partner chose, right? And I start asking, do you collect trading cards? Oh, so you can't be Bruno. You can't be Janice. But do you watch DVDs? Well, maybe it's Felix. Let's see. Well, it could be Eric too, right? So this is the activity based on speaking skills, right? Or developing speaking skills. But what if I ask students to write down 7 sentences about the things they do every day? I walk around checking their sentences, then I get the papers all together, I shuffle them, and I distribute back to the students. So everybody will get a set of 7 sentences without knowing who wrote it. They are going to read the sentences out loud and try to find out the person in the classroom who wrote all the sentences. So it becomes a guessing game, but it involves not only reading and writing, but speaking as well, right? So personalizing is something very important, even for vocabulary, because the students have to have that kind of ownership of the language. They have to use it using their own background knowledge. They have to be able to express their feelings, express their points of view, right? And what about this one? I can ask students to match words to the pictures, but after doing this, I can ask the students to name things according to what I am going to say. Things that you wear. So they are going to use coat, boots, etc. Things that are heavy, things that are expensive, things that are colorful. In this case, all of them, right? Things that are useful, things that you use to sleep, things that you use to walk, things that you use in the morning, things that you use at night, and so on and so forth. Every time I say one word, the students are going to rethink and go over the vocabulary over and over and over again. And they're going to select vocabulary according to the input that I'm giving them. So again, it's not just a matter of knowing the word, but knowing how this word can fit into different categories or into different situations as well, right? What about the survey? Of course, it comes with the answers, right? But because I took it from the teacher's edition. But basically, this is to teach students, of course, to use adverbs of frequency, definitely. But we are making them rethink their habits in terms of studies, right? So how often do you do your homework? Well, I never do my homework. And you're going to see that. Do you think that that's cool? Do you think that that's okay? Look at your grades. Don't you think you should do at least, maybe if not always, at least usually? So they are going to start comparing what they do to what other students do. And you can spot what they are doing also out of the room, right? So again, to think about their own ways of dealing with responsibility, with commitment is something important as well. It works with the interpersonal intelligence as well, right? Okay. What about this activity? I want you to point at the adverbs that I'm going to say, right? Sometimes, always, hardly ever, usually, never. Very good. Now I'm going to say an activity and you point to the adverb that refers to this activity, right? Example, go dancing. I would say that sometimes, right, for me. So I'll put point to sometimes. Go shopping. For example, I would point to usually. And when you do that, you do, I usually go shopping. Okay? Very good. So go dancing. Go shopping. Sleep late. Read books. Go bowling. Clean the house. Listen to music. Call my friends. Drive around the city. Visit my friends. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you. So see, again, you can personalize this using activities that students are keen on doing, right? For example, you can ask them, list the 5 top activities that you do over the weekend. And then, instead of only using these ones that you have on your book, you can have students using the ones that they like better. For example, surfing on the internet. Example, right? Now, okay, so now with a real classroom situation, I would ask students to write down. It's a dictation. But in this case, you're not going to write down the words. You're going to point to the columns where you think the words belong, right? So, for example, has a dog. It's not appearance. It's not personality. So it has to be under other in this column, okay? So I am going to show you the words and you give me the column, okay? Has blue eyes, has curly hair, is creative, is Peruvian, is tall, is trustworthy, likes to take, likes to take risks, lives in the U.S., makes friends easily, speaks Spanish, and wears glasses. So see, every time you hear a word, it's not just a matter of writing it down. It's a matter of looking and checking where it fits. And this is a little more challenging than the previous exercise because it's not just a matter of responding. You have to really think about the words you are hearing, right? So, for example, is creative, right? It's different than having, for example, trustworthy, right? In this case, related to personality, makes friends easily. It is personality too, but it could fit other depending on the way people or students see the words being mentioned, right? They can think about grammar or they can think about the meaning of the words, right? Just for you to have an idea, this would be the key to this exercise, right? And similar activities can be made. For example, you can mix furniture, food, and I don't know, uh, transportation. Or you can mix verbs, nouns, and adjectives, for example, right? When working with vocabulary, the good thing is that you have to activate students' background knowledge. We have to know previously what they know about the topic, right, and build on that. Then we can exploit the written and spoken form, work on meanings in a clear way. We can contextualize in order to have students understand how language can be used, right? Personalize, we can offer as well many opportunities for vocabulary practice. Look at the exercise you have in your book. How can I use this exercise as an extra activity, like I did with the activities that we practiced today? I know that I'm a little late in schedule, right? Or almost getting late in schedule. But because we lost some time at the beginning, I am going to ask for interest in terms of time, right? So I'm gonna continue just for around 5 minutes more. Is it okay with you? Yes? Okay. So vocabulary teaching tips. Number one, pre-teach. It doesn't matter if you work with the flashcards or words and definitions or an activity where you're going to explore vocabulary first, but always start with vocabulary. You either teach or review vocabulary, as I said, right? That will enhance your possibilities of achieving success at the end of a task, right? Attach words to meaning, right? Have students list new words, like in a glossary, so they will know what are the important words. Sorry, what are the important words and the words they have to study for the test, right? Put the unknown words in an exercise when necessary, because looking or listening to it once may not be enough, right? Quickly give the meaning of low-frequency words. For example, if a student says, "How do you say that word?" and then you spend, let's say, 5 minutes trying to explain the word. If it's not part of your teaching, sometimes you can even translate a word very, very quickly because it's not part of your teaching. Now, the words that are part of your teaching, for example, a lexical set or words related to listening or reading passage, these you have to prepare an activity in order to have students not only learn the meaning of the words, but be able to recognize them within the activity that you want to develop, right? Work on meanings and collocations of a word. Help learners use context to guess. Use dictionaries not to translate the whole text, but at least keywords. They will learn how to get independent for that. And break the words into parts, teaching them how to recognize them. For example, when it's plural, when it's past tense, when a word becomes a noun or an adjective, and so on and so forth. Of course, everything in due time. Why? Because, for example, if we're talking about kids, you can't do that. But if you are talking about teens in, let's say, higher levels or adults, this is quite possible to be done. Okay? Look at Peanuts from Charles Schulz. This is Peppermint, and she's taking a biology test. And she's reading, "A subject at rest, breathing at 12 breaths per minute and a tidal volume of 500 milliliters was found to have a PCO2 of 40 millimeters Hg hydrogen for alveolar air and 30 millimeters Hg for mixed expired. During a task of mild exercise, the same subject had a respiratory rate of 16 breaths per minute and a tidal volume of 800 milliliters. What was the subject's alveolar ventilation rate during the exercise?" She stops, looks at the page, she thinks and thinks and thinks, and next thing she does is help. So I'm going to use a quote from Anatole France, and he says, "The finest words in the world are only vain sounds if you cannot understand them." So imagine how your students feel if they want to participate in an activity and they can't understand the words that are being said by either you as teachers or the listening passage, right? So then, again, for me, everything starts by building the students' knowledge on vocabulary, and then everything else comes in time, right? Or together. And words are words, but they're only words. No, they have meaning, right? And we choose the ones that we want, and we have to be careful with the words that we use. Not only about the words we teach our students that are in the book, but the words we use in order to conduct the activities. Because words are not simply a list that you can pick from. Words can be something very, very harmful as well, right? And it shows a lot the kind of person we are. Like this, well, would we be the kind of person who would choose this kind of words or these kind of words? Mm, No need to answer. We know we are teachers, right? And in this case, uh, the words we use or the way we talk to the students, they tell a lot about who we are and what we like, right? And in this case, we teachers, we have a common, let's say, agreement on the most important or popular words, right? And in the personal side of our life, probably we are going to use different types of words as well, right? But students, most probably, they are using these kind of words, right? And we are using these ones. Isn't it true? I hope you agree, right? Because these are certainly mine. Okay, but words unfold a world of knowledge. And this is what we want for our students. It's not teaching all the words that are to be taught, but we can teach them how to be able to find out words or how to understand words by themselves. by themselves, teaching them how to work with vocabulary, teaching them how to develop their skills in listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and teaching them how to think. And thinking is the most important thing, right? Socrates used to say that I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. So let's make them think and let's make them learn how to use words, right? And how to think the words the words they choose, right? This is an ad from the Telegraph, but I thought the saying was beautiful. Words are powerful, so let's choose them well, right? Especially when we are working with the students, right? Okay, confident speakers. We don't want students like this, right? And we don't want students like this, thinking they are the cream of the crop, or the let's say the last, as we say in Portuguese, the last cookie in the pack, right, or in the package. What we want is to have students enjoy speaking in English or enjoy reading in English, in knowing that language learning is something not only enjoyable, but it brings a lot of achievement, this feeling of achievement that we are capable of learning and using it professionally, and socially as well, right? Okay, most activities were taken from the Connect series, right? The new, this revised edition is called Connect Revised Edition, now in a combo edition, right? You can find more information from our site. Bibliography, I use a lot of quotes from Learning Vocabulary in Another Language from ISP Nation. You saw the quotes, right? Vocabulary in Language Teaching from Norbert Schmidt. Vocabulary description, acquisition, and pedagogy. I also used working with words and 5-minute activities. Most of the quotes were taken from these books. And of course, you can see again this presentation on YouTube later when it's uploaded. And sorry for the ones who were not able to see the whole thing from beginning to end in a very clear, in my I mean, were able to hear my voice clearly and see the presentation clearly. As I said, time is kind of short. We had these inconveniences at the beginning. But anyway, I'm going to give you my email address. Please keep in touch and send me the questions I won't be able to answer during the session, okay? And words are fun. And here we have board, board of education and board of education, right? Different senses. So I think that we could make a board of teachers, but I hope you didn't become bored teachers with this presentation. I hope you have enjoyed it, but it's not over yet. Don't uh, get out of the don't disconnect. This is my feedback link. Please let us know what you think about this session, right? And oh yes, this well, there will be another one in at the end of the session. So you either answer this one, or the one that I are going to show up at the end of the link, right? This is more on the content, and the other one will be more on the webinar as a whole. Okay, you can use the QR code if you want. Okay, yes, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Okay, this is the last activity I want you to perform, right? I am going to give you an entry. I'm not going to the whole squares of this game, but I'm going to show you a question, and you have half a second to answer. Otherwise, I'm going to the next question, okay? Are you ready? I hope so, right? I'm going to start. Can you name 6 months of the year? Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good. Now, can you answer this question? What time is it now? Don't tell me, please. I don't want to know. I know I'm late. Okay. Can you complete the sentence? My birthday is on. Very good. Now, can you name five rooms in a house? One, two, three, four, five. Very good. Can you say hello in three languages? One, two, three. Very good. Now, can you name five school subjects? One, two, three, four, five. Very good. Can you say one thing you can do and one thing you can't do? One thing you can do, one thing you can't do. Very good. Can you say the days of the week starting with Monday? Monday? Very good. Okay, can you name five nationalities? One, two, three, four, five. And it's all about vocabulary, right? But one last question. What do you do? Well, I am a teacher. Very good. And congratulations. We still have 9 days to go, but teachers make a world of difference. And because I don't know if I'm going to see you or meet you again before Teacher's Day, have a very nice Teacher's Day, right? You deserve it. I can't see you, but see this hug? It's for you. Thank you so very much for joining the session. I'm sorry I wasn't able to um, really check all your comments, but last but not least, I want to leave you my email address. Please do keep in touch, right? Thank you so very much. Sorry for all the inconveniences. I think that I I led you some of the times without any sound or anything, but I hope it paid off for you to stay up to the end of the session. And I hope to see you again in another webinar from Cambridge University Press, right? Have a very, very nice weekend. I really enjoyed working with all of you, okay? Thank you. Have a very nice weekend, all of you. Thank you. Well,